G'day, JP here from MQ Media. The subject of today's Centenary of Speed podcast is Dave Armstrong. Dave was a member of the first ever Australian Motocross of Nations team and a two-time vice champion of Mr. Motocross. He also won the Finke Desert Race, the 4-day Enduro Championship twice, and the Maryborough 3-hour Dirt Track Championship multiple times. It's this incredible versatility, as well as his sense of fun and his passion for bikes of all kinds, that makes him a unique and an interesting interview. Let's check him out. Dave Armstrong, welcome to Centenary of Speed. Great to see you, mate. So, I'm just looking at a few notes here from your CV, just for, I guess, those of our younger viewers who mightn't know too well who you are and what you've done. And so I'm just looking at a few of the high points here. You were a member of the first Australian team ever at the Motocross of Nations in Sweden in '84. You finished vice champion to Craig Dack in both the '86 and '87 Mr. Motocross series. You won the 125 Gold Cup that ran along with it in '86, '87, '88. You went back to the MX of Nations in Italy with Belli and Dacky in '86 and finished incredible 7th overall, which is pretty amazing considering 3 years earlier you guys hadn't qualified. So we struggled to qualify. Yeah. What else? You're a 4-time Australian Motocross Championship runner-up, twice on 500, once on 125, once on 250. Ironically, the place you did win a national championship, 2 of them actually, was in the sport of enduro in '89 and '91. Going from racing Mr. Motocross in '88 to winning the 4-day in '89, how long had that plan been in the pipeline?
Enduro thing was something I was always going to go into because I was in the Sunshine Coast Motorcycle Club. Yeah. And I was probably one of not many motocrossers, and all the other guys were enduro guys. So, club days, whatever, I was sort of involved with enduro guys. So for me, it was the next step after motocross.
So was it something you always dabbled in?
Not really. The first actual enduro other than a club event was the AD. It was a Australian 4-day.
A4D, you had an ADA?
Yeah.
Yep,
you were right. Yeah, and I only went in it because I lived 15 minutes up the road from the Park for May. So
you only won that outright, didn't you?
I went real close, which surprised me and many others. The only time I mucked up, I came out of day 2 or 3. I came out still doing work on my bike, and you got to get through. And the guy said to me, "Oh, you've got a bit of time to get to the next section." So I spent a little bit of time finishing work on that bike, and I was actually a minute late to the next section.
Oh, no.
Which frustrated me because certainly if I knew I was going to be late, I would have rode faster. Yeah. But because it was just a rookie mistake. But that cost me the outright, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So back to the beginning, I guess that first Motocross of Nations, how did you come to find yourself there in '84?
Well, I was probably the youngest rider, and it was a bit of a shock that I got chosen, actually. So I must have had a couple of good races leading up to it, or some people didn't want to go. I'm not sure. But for me, it was pretty cool back then. Sunshine Coast Motorcycle Club actually put money towards it for me because we had to pay our own way. Right. And I think even Kip put money in towards it for myself. So it was pay your way. We got our bikes. We sent our bikes over there and all that sort of stuff. So it was really a backyard type deal. We had some help from some people over there, which was unreal. Paddy Gronquist had done the 6-day, and so he looked after us when we were there, and he pulled in a few favours. So yeah, we sort of had things we needed to do to actually get to the race and do the race. And look, we didn't qualify, but I was actually talking to Vaughan Style only about 6 months ago, and I didn't realise that he actually did really, really well. But we had mechanical problems, and I think if we hadn't had the mechanicals, we probably would have qualified. So this was pretty cool.
Do you happen to remember the feeling of who you were at that time, landing in that environment with all of those guys around you and on that track? Do you remember what it felt like?
To be honest, I think it's probably more. It's a way cool to talk about it now, because back then you're a young bloke, you go overseas. Oh, it's just another race. Yeah, there were some mighty famous people around us. It was kind of cool because the week before we went it was when the Motocross of Nations was actually split up from the Trophy of Nations. So the 500s were the week before in Finland, which we went to watch, and we just watching the Americans win and just jaws were nearly on the ground. And yeah, it was really, to race against them the next week was wow. But yeah, we just got on with the job, and you just don't let anything worry you. But it was I think back at it now, I think, wow, what a cool thing to be in the first Australian team. Was really cool, and I was really lucky.
Yeah, it's quite an honour, isn't it? Okay, so then I suppose where your career really started to peak, to my mind at least, you might have a different opinion, 86, 87, just a motocross, for arm wrestles with Craig Dack,
86 was really cool. So I'd been running Honda since 81, just in Queensland, through the local Honda Australia up here and through a dealer. And I sort of worked really hard to get onto Team Honda. So 86 was my year, and I got a gig, and they only contracted me to ride the 125. I'm going, hang on, I'll ride the 125, but I want to ride Mr. Motocross. So it was really cool. I did what I needed to do. Lucky enough, I won the 125, and I had 250. My bikes were unreal. Being Honda, Team Honda bikes were amazing. They were the best. So I had the good gear, and look, I started really badly. The first round, I'm not even sure where I came, but I was out of the top 10 after the second round because there was a mudder at Broadford, and both Craig and I did really poorly in the mud at that race. And then I'd had a shoulder operation at the start of the year, so I was slow starting. But what was so cool about that year, Craig and I got on really, really well.
Yep.
So we trained together, we practiced together, we did it so much together. And basically, because I was always chasing him, I got fastest throughout the year. So, yeah, I actually won the penultimate round in Toowoomba in the mud, which is funny because I brought from the mud. I think I finished out of the top 10. So I go to Toowoomba, home state advantage, I suppose, and I love Toowoomba. And, it was lucky enough to win the round.
Yeah.
And then it put me in I jumped up the ladder a fair bit. And then final was at Oran Park, and Craig had already stitched it up, I think, in the first moto. So a little bit of a helping hand for him in the second, which I won. So he gave me a really good hand by letting me basically win a moto. And I got enough points to come second to him. So it was kind of,
wow.
It was crazy because you would never have thought that after the second round. You thought, oh, wow, what's going on here? So, yeah, I came back quite well.
Mate, that Toowoomba round, like Toowoomba in the mud, in the wet, is not a place to be trifled, but especially back then. Yeah, when it wasn't hard, it was just hard.
Natural. Yeah, it was more natural than it is now.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And it's really weird to me is like, you look at the start of the Supercross series this year, Jeb didn't do any good at one of the mudders, and then, got in the top couple. I can't remember where but he was in the top 3 or 4 in the second mudder. You get the gel on the day, I reckon, with mud, or it either goes well or it goes pear-shaped. Yeah, so that's the way I look at it. And Toowoomba, it's super, that red mud is real. But I remember my dad was a racer, and he used to tell me when I was a young fella, always aim, look for the best place to ride, look for the best lines. And it stuck with me. I still go mountain bike riding now and trail riding now. I'm still looking for the best lines.
Yeah.
It's quite funny, really.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us a little bit about your dad. He was a very high-level motorcycle racer.
Yeah, so he started off in road race. He's probably a bit like me. I don't know if he won many championships, so he got lots of seconds. So, he was right up there in road racing, and then remember when I was very, very young, had a bad fall, hit his head, and then went to scrambles. So, and he was pretty good in those. He got the same thing, I think, seconds and thirds in Australian championships. And then he went to sidecars, and he was still racing like in his 50s, riding a sidecar. And I remember one Australian championship, I think he got third in the junior sidecar on the 650. It was so impressive as a young fellow watching your dad do well. It was like crazy cool.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that sort of stuff like fortifies you internally and makes you, makes you expect success of your own?
No, not really. I don't think so. I just think the good thing about what I believe I had as a youngster is my dad gave me the tools to get on and have fun and ride motorcycles.
And what were they?
So back in my day, SL70s, XR75.
Oh, like literally the tools. Yeah, actually, the tools.
And because he's an old school racer, an old school mechanic.
Yeah.
We had some really cool mini bikes. Like they were, he'd get change the suspension, the positioning of the shocks that you had to do in those days. And we had really good engines because he was really cool at getting engines working different cams because they were full strokes, obviously. And high comp pistons, the whole he was right in it. So we had really good bikes, which certainly helped.
And what about teaching you about sort of, teach you about riding technique and teach you about racecraft and I suppose the philosophy behind motorcycle racing. Did you learn a lot?
Yeah, that's like, and like I said, and I still talk about it, the main thing, and even when I go riding with their friends, they all say, my line selection, and I dead set off my father. He was strong advocate of, pick the good lines, which makes sense.
And what was the definition of good in this case?
Well, okay, if it's muddy, you'd be out on the grass somewhere. You wouldn't be sliding around on the mud. You'd be out looking for the grass, or you'd look for a rut.
So like a creative aspect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice. Super interesting. And I remember I was on a adventure ride about 18 months ago, and there was this, it was a 4-drive track going down a slide off camber, and the fellow was having trouble riding down. He was on the right hand side, and I said, mate, there was water actually running down the left-hand side, right down the water. It was only rainwater, but it was in a groove, so it actually had traction there. Yeah, so it's crazy. Even at this age, I'm still looking for the best. And I rode straight down with this poor guy sliding down. So it's just, it can save you a lot of heartache.
Yeah. Now, one thing I didn't mention before when I was sort of going through your hit list there is the dirt track. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to speak to you, is I've always rated you so highly as a rider because of your versatility. You've been across in motocross and desert racing and enduro and dirt track. So tell us, you said you said 3 of the Maryborough 3-hour races that you won?
Yeah, I've won. Well, I think I follow a dirt track site on Facebook. Yeah. And I'm sure I read the other day I got 4. I can't even remember the 4th. Anyway, when I moved as a youngster, as a 14-year-old, our family moved to Harvey Bay. Mm-hmm. Harvey Bay is right next to Maryborough, which is one of the best dirt tracks in, I think, well, definitely Queensland, maybe debatable whether it was Australia. Yeah. And so we did dirt track. It was cool. And I remember doing the first, I think I did a 3-hour on a 125 Suzuki, and people were just shaking the heck out. You're not going to be able to do 3 hours by yourself. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could do this. I finished, I think I got 40, But yeah, I don't know, for some reason, and I put down my parents, I seem to have endurance where it doesn't worry me. That it was really interesting. So one of the Maryborough 3 hours, we used to run a knobby on the front, a trial store in the rear. Yep. And there was a fellow, Rory McDonald, who was my Dunlop wreck. He had an idea. Yeah. So we ran, the next year we went to an 18-inch wet weather road race tire on the front. Yeah. And because we needed longevity for 3-hour race, he hand grooved a slick for me. Mm-hmm. Which sounds really weird and that, but it worked a treat. Mm-hmm. We did, in 3 hours, we went from 39 second lap times down to 33s. It was ridiculous. It was like road racing, because you just crank the bike over because you had so much traction. You just rode around the corner. It was cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And was that sort of like as the track was like forming up a groove, like a hard line? Well, yeah, and you did right. So there was a racing line like they talk about on road race, and it was only like a foot wide or a foot and a half wide. So to pass people, quite interesting. But it still worked a treat, and I really enjoyed my dirt track. Yeah. Okay, so what's I asked about? So, enduro. I've got to know how did that come about? Like, it can't be easy to be in the middle of your motocross career and then go, I think I might change lanes here. Well, it was just like I said. I lived just down the road from the park firm, and it was a big event. I went, okay. So I was sponsored by Kawasaki, and I went and registered my practice bike. And I hung the lights off my practice bike and registered it. And just went right. It was so much fun. And, it was crazy. It was a dead set real enduro, like where you did 8.5 hours in the saddle. Mm. And I remember coming out, following arrows. I'd come out onto the road and I'd go, I didn't know which way to go because you went around the hinterland of the Sodtron Coast just in some amazing places on some amazing trails. It was super cool and the most fun. Mm-hmm. It got pretty wet during that event, didn't it? Yeah, they cancelled a few sections that got mudded out, and but it was probably one of the highlights for me was Conondale. I'll say they marked a 5-kilometre special test around Great Park, and I'd probably ridden every part of Great Park in the previous 5 or 6 years as club days. Yeah. So obviously club day, they just go muck out a track and we'd go race it. And I remember one particular week coming down the start straight back to front, there was jumps in it. Yeah. And I knew from the club day you could hit these things full noise, even as a backward jump, you could hit, and it was funny. And back then I was 14 seconds quicker than the top European guy. I did it. advantage.
Yeah, just a bit.
Plus, I had bark busters too, because always the problem with green parkers, they used to use big stakes in corners.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I tended to like tight lines.
Yep.
With bark busters, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you tap it out the way.
It was funny because Steve Gore was helping me out at that meeting, and after the special test kind of had no front mud guard, smashed it off on a post. It was just like because you had bark busters and no care. It was so funny. It was just full on. So it was really good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what about now, to get into these things seriously, you've got to have your support, your industry support, and the support of whoever you're actually riding for at the time. How did those evolutions occur?
It's kind of interesting because I don't quite remember how I broke it to Kawasaki. I was going to register my practice bike in a race. I think I just did it. So that bit, I mean, I had great support from motocross, so it didn't really matter. It was only a one-off event, and I think they got pretty good publicity out of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So what features did you have to add or subtract to your riding to become a gun enduro rider?
It's actually kind of interesting because I go back to what my father had taught me when I was young, is pick good lines. And I think thinking about your riding, thinking about where you're riding is all you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
My feature, I suppose what worked for me is fight motos and anything motocross orientated. I was good. Some of the special tests was through the bush, there was guys faster than me, but I can pull it together when there was more of a closed track situation. And that's where I got my speed from. And I remember my first enduro, I ran 18-pound front rear. I wasn't getting a flat tire. I was about a 5-minute tire change, where some of the reed guys are 2 minutes. Yeah. I was like, high pressures. I just rode it. Yeah. So I didn't sort of alter much. I just, it was when you're young, it was just fun. So, you just took everything you had, you just took it. You just went for it. It just didn't matter. I had nothing to lose either.
Yeah. I think that's the important thing, isn't it?
Nothing to lose. Who's this motocross guy?
Yeah.
Because no one thought I could do any good. I didn't even know if I'd do any good, but I do like a challenge.
Yep. Now, your second national enduro title came in 1991, and then you rode the 1992 ISDE in Cessnock. What was it like to ride an ISDE?
Yeah, that was cool. Because the cool thing about that international event, you're riding against the best in the world, so that was cool. Had a great time. And
what were you riding in that? Were you on KTM?
Yeah, I was riding KTM. Yeah, so it was a Bert Flood, through Bert Flood. John Reading had a massive. He ran the race, and we ran basically with Bert. So, and he'd always, I was always going to head to KTM after my motocross days. I'd already spoke to John Reading previously, so that was sort of all mapped out. And then I'd hurt myself in 1990. I broke my wrist, so that was my retirement from motocross, and then got the wrist better, and then had some KTMs sitting in the garage for the next year. So that was fun. Cool.
He was good, wasn't he? Like, he was always very proactive about those things. So that was, you didn't have to fight him. He could see the value in things, potentially the value.
Unbelievable, actually, because I'll tell you another story about the 6 day. So, because it's in the towards middle of the year, so I think it's September. So we had, it was in 92, we had 92.5 milers. So they actually had brand new bikes for us, these 92.5 special 6 day type edition bikes. And KTM paid, or Bert Flood paid for those. Like, I mean, I felt really honoured that we had like the best gear. It was so cool. Yeah, and it was just amazing.
And how did that event unfold for you?
Well, I think I got 6 in the 250 class, which I found out later I should have wrote the 300 because I might have actually won it or got second, because there's 250 class, obviously, back then was there was the most competition in it. And so I think I got 11th outright. So I was pretty happy with that for my first international enduro.
Yeah, that's pretty wild at a 6 day.
Yeah, and it's just a fun, like, same thing, the most amazing event, the final moto, it was probably, and I raced a few times overseas, it would probably been the best motocross track I've ever ridden. And anyone that rode that 6 day or was a spectating there, they would have said it was amazing. There was natural double jumps and stuff in it. It was out of control.
Yeah. I was there.
Oh, you were that way. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I remember the coolest thing is, like, you're on the start line. I think there was like 60 in our race, and I went around the first corner in like third. I thought I'd won it already, because just obviously having a bad start with that many riders just a hub, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't actually win the race. It was I'm not sure where the fellow was that beat me, but I was second, so I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. The crowd went crazy. It was just amazing.
Yeah, that's right. There was a lot of joy and celebration for the Australian performances, wasn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's our first, it was first home enduro 6 day.
Yeah.
And I think we did all pretty well.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, I've got to ask this one. Back in the motocross days, the party boy nickname. How did that one come about? And what's your take of that?
Oh, look, it got blown a fair bit out of proportion. Look, we used to do a fair few supercrosses, and it was always after the supercross. Righto, boys, where we go to party. So I got the nickname Party Boy. But partying was going out, listen to music, having a couple of waters or soft drinks, and be home not too late. Yeah,
and the controversy about that was in that era it was changing from where you might have behaved like that to a much more super serious kind of approach.
Yeah, it was still good. It was fun because it was, I suppose, through my era, we had fun. It was still serious, but we had fun.
Yep.
And that was the cool thing about it.
Yeah. Now, speaking of having fun, you were on the Mulry MR team with Peter Melton.
Yes.
How do you remember Peter?
Fond memories of Peter. Oh, yeah. We used to, obviously, he started really quite young and was very talented. I remember his father used to always come up to me. He said, my son's going to beat you. I said, I have no doubt he's going to beat you. Just not.
Not today.
Basically, so I used to always laugh about that. So he got, unreal rider, and we had a fun year too. He injured himself, I think, because he didn't do the Australian title because he hurt himself.
Okay.
And I went down by himself to do those, which, great guy. I remember practicing at his house at the back of Acacia Ridge. This guy, no wonder this guy's so good. He just rode out his back gate and he was into sand track.
Yeah, I remember that. That was
like amazing.
Was it Balls Quarry or something like that? Yeah, it is
just, and it was one of those tracks, and this is the interesting part of it, is the harder the person's practice track is to get your head around, the better the riders have it. It can be a very technical rider. Yeah, I'm surprised. I remember some of the places we used to practice. I used to, when I lived in Melbourne, rode for Team Honda, I used to practice under the Westgate Bridge. And Craig Dack and I used to go out. There was the mini bike track off to one side. We'd go out past there, and it was just all woods. And you just map out a bit of a track and do motos. And it was one of those tracks that you'd never do a lap where you went, I did that unreal. You would every lap you learn something, which I think is the best practice to do. Some of the modern guys, they practice on manicured like tracks, and I'm just going, I know it's got to be the gnarliest, roughest track you can find to get your skills, technical skills up. So that was interesting.
Yeah. That confuses me a little bit about I suppose the number of people that want to always ride, like say QB for example, that want to practice on practice tracks all the time, and I would have thought that there'd be a hell of a lot of value in training in what Simon here calls Moto3 tracks. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. I mean, it's, to me, the muddiest, roughest track is probably, it's one you don't like doing, but it's the best for you. Yeah. So it's interesting. But I think, I'm not sure. I think I was in an era, a lucky era, because I live back on the Sunshine Coast now, and I lived there in the 80s, and we had iron tracks I could go to. I had a track in the bottom of the Budrum golf course. And I used to take my 500 and then it was sandy, and I used to ride, it was a second gear track, and you just ride around saying, it was right through corners. It was so much fun, but it was good for your skills. And another fellow, mate of mine, had a track at the back of his house. I used to ride there twice a week.
Yeah.
It seems more difficult these days to find that good place where they can ride.
Yep.
And practice and hone their skills. I mean, QMP is a fantastic complex, and they prep it probably too well for someone who's trying to learn how to ride a rough and nasty motocross track. Saying that, I like smooth tracks nowadays.
Yeah, well, yeah. Now, mate, you were, I suppose that there were, back in that era, there were riders who were famous for being great 125 riders or good 500 riders or just 250 riders. You managed to be good at all of those. How is that? But how did you manage to get your head around the fact that they all had different personalities and different ways that you ride them?
It's kind of interesting that, because I remember as a junior, I was on a 125 Suzuki, and then so when I finished junior, so I had my 125 for the year before, and then I had my brother's old 250, so I had a 125 and a 250, and I rode those and I did pretty well. And back then the bikes used to break a bit. So I remember selling the 250 because it kept breaking and buying a current model 250 and got my head around that. And then the next year I was going to buy a 465. Well, I wanted to buy a 465. I was a bit worried about it. So I actually got a ride on one. And I went, this typical young fellow. I was living in Harvey Bay and I just like got on it and went, yeah, that's not too bad. So I bought one and things, did okay on that. And it's kind of interesting because then it was all 500s. Because back in those days, you worked way in 125, 250, but the 500 was the main class. That's where you needed to be. That's where Mr. Motocross was. So that's where you were aiming. They probably like it is now in the 450 class. You're trying to get to the top rung of the ladder. So I suppose you do your apprenticeship on the smaller bikes. And then when I rode, well, it was really interesting. So 85, Mr. Motocross went back to 250. So we all had to learn to ride 250s again.
Yeah.
Because the only time you'd use 250 throughout the year would be a few local races and the Australian titles. And then Mr. Motocross was 500s. So, yeah, I suppose to answer your question, just because you just rode different things, you just got used to it.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you think, you've got a long list of bikes in your history. Do you have any favourite ones back in that?
No, it's interesting you say that because I'd done it. I remember when I bought the 465 Yamaha in 1980, and I had a reasonably good year on it. I got up to A grade, and I was basically second year or third year apprentice, can't remember now, plumber, and I basically was done. I didn't want to buy another bike. I couldn't afford it. It was tough. And I remember I ran into Bob Johnston at Overland where he was working at the time. I said, I'm pretty well done. I can't afford to buy a bike. Rah. And he said, so I can do. He made a phone call. Next minute I'm riding a 450 Honda, as a trial. And it's quite funny because that's when Honda bought their first big bore out, and they gave 3 450s away. Lucky I had one of it. Then they gave 2 250s away. Halfway through the year, all the guys that they'd given the bikes to had heard themselves something that got well, were tired. I got all these bikes. Well, and I won a Queensland title on the 450 that year.
Yeah,
which was kind of cool. So and it was really cool. There was a guy, a fellow by the name Barry Ashton. He's no longer with us, but he was the head of Honda in Queensland. And he was a proactive guy. He flew me to Mr. Motocross as a young fella. I couldn't hardly get in the top 10, but it worked a treat because I got the taste for it and I worked hard and then each year I got a little bit better. So it was kind of cool. So it's certainly cool to have good people and people that are happy to spend the money to help you get where you want to go.
Yeah. Hey, so when you think back to the rider that you were at the peak of your powers, what made Dave Armstrong who he was at that point? What made you different from the other people?
That's a really interesting, a hard question because when you come out of junior, you're winning your races. And then I remember going to C grade, and I remember the first C grade race, I got my bum kicked, and I had to regroup, what do I... And then I went to a race, and I lived in Harvey Bay, so I did a race in Gladstone, and I did okay, and it gave me confidence. But I think for me, I was a slow starter, and I got better at the end of the race.
Okay.
So that was probably not a good thing these days. Like, I wished I had been smart enough to realise that and probably work on that. Work on, training harder. Because you'd go out on a run and I'd run 30 minutes or whatever, and first 15 I'd get to where I want to go, and then I'd run like heck home.
Yep.
And it actually was a really smart thing to do because that's how I raced.
Yeah.
So I'd be just, doing the business, and then you charge home, which I should have been faster from things. So, I definitely had some things that I wished I had done better. But I really, I suppose to answer your question, the stamina, just to be able to keep going and get going faster at the end of the race at the start.
And that's attention span as well as stamina, isn't it?
It's interesting. I think you did it right, and that's why I think I did well at 3 hour dirt tracks because I did, like I was brushing on the floor, but the last race I did was 308 laps. 308 laps by yourself, and you stop for fuel. Like I stopped twice for fuel. And, so that's, I look at it, I go, that's attention span. Yeah, it's been able to just concentrate and keep your eye on the ball for that long. So, it's kind of cool when I look back and see those things. I think, I did have something reasonable going on back then.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about, you guys my age, we sort of look at the guys that you bank bars with and consider them, titans and motocross, in Australia. And I guess I want to know, like, who are the ones that you respected the most, and what stood out about them? What made them so great?
It was interesting. So my dad used to race, so I'd be going to bike races since I was very young. And I remember I'd go to races because we grew up in Victoria, so we'd go to Victorian races, and there'd be the likes of Gary Flood, Trevor Flood, Mike Gladman, all this stuff. So they were my heroes. And that was what was quite cool when I actually went to ride for Bert Flood on KTM. I worked a little bit with Gary Flood, and that was basic because he was my hero. He was just, and he's a smart guy that's raced different, all like speedways, raced scrambles, he's raced it all. And but he also knows how to engineer the bike and make them amazing. So, yeah, I suppose that era was the guys that I looked up to. And yeah, Andrew Bailey, quite a very good friend. And I remember I came in and took over after so he was Queensland #1 in the late 70s, early 80s. And I sort of took over from him. He retired. And I remember that felt pretty cool because he was my hero. I was probably 15, 16 watching him race, and he was a gun.
And if you think back to the guys that you worked with, guys like Daggy, Burley, Gawley, Born Style, now that you're older, do you ever look back at those guys and go, now I think about that, that's what this guy had. That's what this guy had.
Probably not to that extent. It's funny, I went mountain bike riding with Born Style about 6 months ago. Yeah. That was so cool. Like, it was Steve Gauls there, Born Style, a few other guys, but it was just banging around like we were in our 20s again, riding mountain bikes, just giving it it was funny. But yeah, you do, well, you can have a look at like Vaughan's, he's a perfectionist in my eyes. So he did everything. I remember staying once with it in Sydney, we went out for a race, but he just did everything so well. So everything, and Steve Wells the same. He's a perfectionist with how he does it. And I probably not so much. I'm a bit of a fly by the seat of my pants type of guy. Yeah. Which, in one respect, whenever I went to a race, I was super prepared. Back, you had all your spares, you had everything going. I'd write lists so I would forget stuff. Yep. You know what I mean? So I was fairly, but as a race, that's an interesting question. I suppose I don't give it a lot of thought. So why not just enjoyed the moment, I suppose. Yep.
Now, mate, every time I've bumped into you over the years, you've got a story to tell me about what you're riding and getting joy out of that has handlebars at any given particular moment. What have you been amusing yourself with over the years?
Well, I've got into adventure riding, which is another interesting. It was hard for me to ride a bike that weighed over 200 kilos. And I slowly got my head around it. But so I've got an 890 KTM now that we're trying. We don't get out as often as we should, but when I do, I enjoy it. So we go on. I did an 8-day ride just before Easter, which was kind of cool. And you go to amazing places and ride some amazing tracks. And so I enjoy that. And then I've still got a small group of mates. We go riding on. I got a 500 AXC.
Yeah, nice.
So go out and play. Go to Ammermoor a lot, up Kenilworth Way, up the sunny coast. Yeah. So still burn around.
Yep. Still take a look at that 500 EXC and think about what you rode 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever, and just go, man, the difference. Like,
they do make it easy for you. Yeah. I hate the Kickstarter bike now. But actually, it was funny. I was watching that clip of Jet Lawrence after he rode a 500 Honda, the R500.
Yeah.
And he's saying how crazy. And back then, that's all we had.
Yes.
And it's really interesting. I love the VMX scene. I love looking at those bikes. I actually don't care to ride them anymore. But I love looking at them. I think they're the most amazing. They're just cool. But I'm not keen on riding. I love my modern bike.
Yeah. I love looking at them too. They just take me back.
Yeah.
But they've turned me into a teenager again.
Yeah. I've actually, I've got my dad's original 74 400 Husqvarna. And I've got a mate that's doing it up now. Yeah. And we'll have it up at kind of a racing weekend, hopefully finished. It's sending me photos and you just go, wow, that's amazing. It's better than when it rolled out of the showroom floor. Yeah.
You're in the e-bikes as well as?
Yeah, so I got an e-bike. I love riding e-bikes. And it's funny, people give you a hard time about having an e-bike, but you go on a ride and you're averaging 6-7 kilometres an hour quicker on the whole ride. It's like riding a dirt bike. And so for me, it's like 10 minutes from my house. I can be in the bush and just burn. It's so much fun.
So you rocked out to Fink in 1987, never been there before, and won the thing. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it was definitely crazy. So back then, the club invited me out there, and we raced at Manjimup the week before. It was pretty cool because I was riding Kawasaki KX500, and Trevor Williams had done it a fair few times, and I called him up and got all the info. So I got jetting, I got gearing, I had everything all sorted out for a win. We did Manjimup, took the bike back to the airport in WA, Perth Airport, basically pulled the fuel tank off. I think I swapped my big tank on and just loaded it on an aeroplane and set it down the Springs. It was crazy. And we rocked into Alice, I think it was Tuesday morning, and I was pretty lucky. The apprentice of the Honda Kawasaki shop was a bloke by the name of Randall Gregory.
Oh, geez.
He was only a young bloke, and he was riding the 250, and he goes, I didn't have a bike to pre-run. He goes, you can borrow mine. So he lent me his bike to pre-run. It was like an XR 600 or something like that, maybe a 650. Anyway, so I did two. I rode down, I got halfway twice, and I rode the full length of the track once.
Wow.
And it was pretty wild, actually, but cool at the same time. But
I do, sorry, just sorry to butt in on that point. Pretty wild. You've glossed over that pretty easily, mate. I mean, this is speak we're talking about.
Actually, I'll tell you what, there's a bit of a side note. So I went up to Alice, and I didn't send. My mechanic went back with Craig Dack, Grant Covers. They went back to Melbourne together. Somehow or other, the club has talked Craig into doing the race. So he's turned up on the Wednesday or the Thursday. So he had even less chance to learn the track than me. Anyway, so we're in the same shop because it's a Honda Kawasaki shop.
Oh, yeah.
That was hilarious. So we both prepping our bikes and da-da-da. So Saturday, they didn't have Prologue in 87. That came later. So we got our race bikes set up, and we went out, and we rode down about 30 Ks on the pace a bit. And we stopped, and we looked at each other, went, how are we going to do this race? And both our arms, both of us are like rocks. They're pumped up because we were hanging on so damn tight because we were going so fast. We're not used to that stuff.
Yeah.
And so we just like, sure, bear. Wow, how's this going to work?
How fast do you reckon you're going?
We might have only been doing, 80 mile an hour, 90 mile an hour at the time. I think my bike was a pretty well stock engine, so it'd do 160 Ks.
Yeah, okay, you're right.
And that's in a purd, like on probably the road section. So it was kind of fun. It was, we didn't know what to expect. So, but come race day, I was really surprised because in 87, I was as fit as I could have been. I was doing well at motocross, so everything was working really well. And I remember getting down to Alice, and I actually crashed on the way down. I overshot a corner, and I had about a millisecond to think, I'll hit that bushy tree over there to slow me down. That all worked well, but there was a sleeper on the other side. It was over the bars. Even it was funny because I was wearing an enduro jacket, and it had my own tyre marks up. Like it was out of control.
It's a bad day when you run over yourself.
Run over yourself, exactly. So I picked the bike up, and I think at the time I must have started seeing dust from the guy in front. So probably that's what wound me up a bit.
So who's it here?
Curtis. I was going to Jeff Curtis. Yeah, he'd won a couple of times in the early years. So he was in front, and I reckon I saw his dust, and that's what probably sent me over the edge. Anyway, so I got the bike going, took off, no damage. Got down there, and I was in second. I said, that's pretty cool. And just changed tyres, spat all of them, sent the knobs off.
Okay.
There's no knobs in this. I'd hate them following me because someone would have got peppered with knobbies. But anyway, so prepped the bike ready for the trip home the next day, and just the way we went. It was funny. I rode. It's way different now. Obviously, it's so more professional now. Everyone pre-runs it. They know every bump. I could rode as fast as I could see, and that's all I could do. And there was a bit of a with $10,000 to win on the line back then. I didn't probably come home. I come home a bit quicker than I went down.
Risk it with this.
There was a little bit of there were spots where you go over a rise where you normally would have backed off. You went
at green.
So, and I got back to I'd fueled up for the last time. I just had to run home. It was about 70, 80 Ks, and I saw the guy leading, parked at his fuel stop. I went, that doesn't seem good for him. I got a little lucky. He actually got a big hole in his tyre, and I couldn't go any further.
Yep.
And So and then I got a flat front tyre just after Deep Well. And I think I rode about 50, 60 Ks flat front. And I remember I laughed. I had a guy that worked for me and managed me, mechanic for me back in the early years. And he always said, you've got to put on a show. You've got to put on a show, you know. Anyway, so I got a flat front tyre.
Yeah.
Everyone, generally, you've been out to Finke, everyone comes over the finish line, wound open.
Yep.
I come over I don't know what I was saying, 50 mile an hour with a flat front tyre, and I just popped a wheelie over the line. Because the craziest things you think of when you, and I remember him talking about it like 10 years previous, you know, you got to, you know, do something. So I did a wheelie over the line, and then a couple of minutes later, Dacky comes in. I was like, motocross, and Steve Ball come third. Oh, wow. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I love because Craig, we like, how cool was that? And then it all worked out that I'd won 10 grand and he'd won $500. Oh. But nah, Craig was good with it. Craig never did it again.
Yeah.
I think it scared him. Look, I think it scared me too, but then I went back the next year and didn't do quite as well. I was actually sick, but yeah, you know, great race, fantastic race. And I still go out there and watch it every now and then, and it's crazy.
It's something special, isn't it? I think it really
is so unique. But watching some of the guys now, because the bikes are so good and they're riding them so well, it's amazing.
Yeah. The stakes are a bit higher too, aren't they? I remember even back in those days, I think Gawley was telling me about a crash he had where he said that he came over a crest and he thought it was the one he had to lean right over, and it was only had to lean left over. Yeah.
I think that was 89.
Okay.
I do remember that crash in here.
Yeah, it was out for 40 minutes or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but he wasn't real healthy. And it's that race that just like, when you got to start taking risks like that, like I look at it now, and I really think people use it as it's their bucket list race.
Yeah.
It's scary to think, but they treat it differently. Racers always want to race. It's a bucket list race and you just want to finish it. It's a different mindset. So it's not sort of thing beyond my bucket list because you always want to try hard. Yeah. And it'd end up in tears for me if I did it now.
Yeah. You ever thought about, what was the last time you raced a bike?
Actually, I did one of the Transmoto 8 hours at Meva, which is the back in Gympie a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of cool because I did it with Jeff Lees, James Deacon, and Tam Paul. It was cool. I'd much prefer to race with those boys than against them. But that was fun. But that was the last race, and I think that's it. I got invited to a Transmoto this year. I thought, we got really lucky that one a couple of years ago because they cancelled because of the rain. And even when they reran it, it was like riding, it was a 23, 24 minute lap, but it was like a motocross track because there was so much moisture in the ground. It was amazing. Yeah. And I'm thinking, maybe that was my song because as you get older, you realise that I don't want to ride in dust. Yeah. I don't want to ride in crap. I want to ride, it was probably the best ride. Like it was so much fun because it was so much moisture in the ground. There was no dust. It was super cool. So yeah, that was the last race I did and probably will be my last race. Mm-hmm. Awesome. My new sport for nursery is pickleball. Now people laugh at that. Yeah. People have a lot of, I was talking to this fellow and he said, you know a lot of people. I said, well, I met people from all over the world, mainly Australia, but people are here and it's really cool. Motorcycling has been fantastic for me. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, mate, it's been a joy to talk to you. Thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it. No worries. Thank you. Thanks again.